There's more breaking news tonight. New CNN polling shows declines in President Trump's approval ratings 1 year to the day after he won the 2016 presidential election. 64% of Americans now say their confidence in President Trump since he took office has decreased. Only 40% of Americans say President Trump is doing a good job keeping his campaign promises. That's down from 48% back in April. The new poll also asked how other countries view President Trump. Only 24% of Americans think foreign leaders respect the president, a big drop from 36% in April. And finally, 68% of Americans do not trust most of what they hear from the White House. These new poll results back up what we saw last night as Democrats swept statewide and local elections around the country in what Democrats and some Republicans are calling a referendum on the president. I spoke earlier about it with Vermont Independent Senator and former Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. Senator, the election yesterday, obviously a good day for Democrats. I wonder what lessons you take away from that and what lessons you think the party should take away from it.
Well, first thought, I think yesterday's elections were really a referendum on the disastrous Trump administration, on his temperament, on his reactionary policies. It was a referendum on Trump and the Republicans lost. The American people from coast to coast are frightened of this president, and they are tired of seeing the billionaire class get their way. So I think it was a good night for Democrats. The other point that I would make, Anderson, is that what impressed me is not just winning governor's races in New Jersey or in Virginia, but the kind of grassroots activism we saw all over this country. Probably the most interesting aspect of last night in Virginia was the fact that the Democrats may control the House of Delegates, winning, I think, some 17 or 18 seats. And those seats were won often by young people, people who had not ever been involved in the political process, and they got involved, and in many cases they won. And you're seeing that all over this country. And to me, that is the most important thing the Democratic Party can now do. Open the doors, bring people in, and when they come in with the energy and the idealism that they have, you're going to see voter turnout go up, and you're going to see Democrats win across the board.
Yeah, that's something Van Jones talked about on our air last night as well. But, you know, a lot of people point to the fact that Governor like Northam is a center-right candidate, someone who voted for George W. Bush twice. Is that the kind of candidate Democrats need to be fielding in order to be competitive?
Well, obviously, in that case, I personally supported a fellow named Tom Perriello in the Democratic primary, and I thought Tom would have been a great candidate and a great governor. But the people in the Democratic primary thought otherwise. Our job now is to come together to defeat Republicans and to move this country in a very different way.
You talked about this being a referendum on the president. In Virginia, white working class voters in rural areas again voted overwhelmingly for Republicans. Are Democrats doing enough to reach out to those voters? They were obviously integral to Trump's win.
I think we've got to move forward on all fronts. In other words, this is not black versus white versus Latino. The African American community, Latino community have particular, very legitimate needs that have to be addressed. But every working person in this country is concerned about the outsourcing of jobs to Mexico and to China. Every worker is concerned about how he or she is going to afford health care. They're concerned about how they're going to afford to send their kids to college, which is why, in my view, we need to make public colleges and universities tuition free. So this is bringing people together around a progressive agenda that says that in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, we don't have to have 40 million people living in poverty. We don't have to see a continuation of the middle class in decline.
You made it clear recently you're not going to run as a Democrat in 2018. You'll run once again as an independent. Does that hurt the Democratic Party? I mean, could it contribute in some way to some of the disarray that we've been seeing? That the de facto leader of the party's progressive wing isn't...
Anderson, let me be very honest and not self-serving in saying the answer to that is no. And that is, we need real reforms in the Democratic Party. And one of the reforms should involve making primaries open, not just limited to registered Democrats, in order to reach out to independents. Right now, Republican Party is at a very, very low level. Democrats are a bit higher than that in terms of public approval. And the largest political grouping in America are now independents. People are not happy with Democrats. They're not happy with Republicans. To say to independents, oh, we don't want you. You're the majority faction in America, but we want to close the doors to you. I think that's politically insane.
I think I know the answer to this, but yeah, I got to ask: if you run for president in 2020, will you run to be the Democratic nominee again, or will you pursue a third-party bid?
No, I would run the same way if I ran. And believe me, I have not made any decision on this yet, but I would run within the Democratic Party process.
The tax bill that Republicans are trying to get through Congress right now, President Trump called into a meeting of moderate Democratic senators, told them, amongst other things, that he'd be a, quote, big loser if this legislation passed as is. I'm wondering what you say to that.
Look, it embarrasses me. I'm not happy to say this. He is the president of the United States, but he lies all of the time. This is just one more lie. Among many other absurd provisions in the tax proposal is the repeal of the estate tax. That repeal would only benefit the top 0.2% of the American people, the very wealthiest people and their families in this country. When Trump tells you that this proposal that he is fighting for will not benefit him and his family, that is totally absurd, and it's just not the truth.
And just lastly, the reporting last week about the agreement the DNC had with the Clinton campaign, Senator Warren said it was proof the primary process was rigged. Donna Brazile, who was the source of the story, now says it wasn't rigged. Let me ask you, in your opinion, was it rigged?
Look, Donna Brazile showed an enormous amount of courage in describing the truth as she saw it when she came into the leadership of the DNC. I don't think there's any sane human being who doesn't believe that my campaign was taking on the entire establishment, including the DNC. But Anderson, to be very honest with you, my job, our job, is to go forward, is to do everything we can to defeat this right-wing agenda of the Republican Party and the Trump administration, not to look backwards.
Senator Sanders, appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well,